Good afternoon. My name is Alexandra Sankova. I'm the director of the Moscow Design Museum. And today we continue our lecture cycle dedicated to the exhibition Fantastic Plastic, which the Moscow Design Museum runs together with the Tretyakov Gallery. Currently, the exhibition halls are closed for quarantine, but we continue our online lecture program, and we hope that the exhibition will be prolonged, or we're sure that it will be prolonged, and when museums are reopened, in the new Tretyakov Gallery, you will be able to visit it. We run online lectures every Thursday with the participants, and I'm happy to introduce Brody Neal, an industrial designer, and his subject is waste to wonder, how to turn waste into wonderful artwork. I think it's a very, very relevant topic. The broadcast is simultaneously interpreted into Russian. For those who would like to listen to the English stream, you will be able to join the Zoom webinar. The link to it will be published in the YouTube chat. I'd like to thank our sponsors and partners, without whom this could not have been possible. These are the Sibur company and the Program of Social Investment, the Formula of Good, the Durat company, who is the partner of the lecture, the Embassy of Finland in Moscow, the Embassy of the Netherlands, and the Embassy of Norway in Moscow, as well as our permanent partner, Arlight, and our information partner, Interior and Design Magazine. Please write your questions in the comments of the stream that you are listening to, and we will choose the best questions to ask them in the end. And now I'm giving the floor to Brody Neal. You're welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for this opportunity, and thank you for everybody for tuning in. I'll start with, well, the very beginning, and if Anton, if you can play the first video, please. So this is Tasmania, where I'm from, where I grew up. And learnt furniture design in the very traditional sense, as in fine woodwork and carpentry. It's a very remote island at the bottom of Australia, at the bottom of the Pacific, and surrounded by wilderness. So you cannot help but be inspired by the nature that surrounds you, and also approach making objects in a very respectful manner in regards to, let's say, treading lightly with the environment that is around you. So if I resort back to my slides. So unfortunately, obviously, the way that we do things has a very big impact. And that impact can be felt on many, many scales. And what we do is we drag, cut, exhaust, dig, explode, all types of things, of materials from faraway places, go to great lengths to refine them and to transform them into other objects, materials. And unfortunately, a lot of that material finds itself ending up as waste. And as you can see, you know, it's on a colossal scale. And as what you will see throughout this presentation is the scale and the effects, mostly of ocean plastic, but of a lot of materials. And I guess my presentation, which is Waste to Wonder, is really showing a potential of how we can reharness those materials, or the potential that's in those materials, and turn them into wonderful objects. So, as I mentioned earlier, you know, throughout my creative life and my career, I've been inspired by nature, and I take on the amazing forms and kind of mathematical, let's say, perfection that is present in nature to inspire furniture. And this is a chair that is about 10 years old, Reverb chair, which is obviously inspired by that beautiful mathematical proportion of separation and division. But I'm also inspired by this stuff, which is waste, and where somebody may see rubbish, I see potential. And a key project in my development here is a model of it in my office. Um, is is a piece that I call the Remix, which is really looking at sheet materials that we were able to take from construction sites, job shops, workshops, etc., sign makers, a lot of the people that I was collaborating with at the time, and taking the scrap materials from them, and via CNC technology and also cutting edge digital design at the time, this is going back about 15 years, to really bring those materials together into a sinuous form. And that resulted in the limited edition Remix, which is remixing recycled materials of all different types, from plywoods to sign makers boards to Corian acrylic, chipboard, plywoods, etc. All 44 different layers and different materials into this singular organic chaise lounge. Another project, which is a little bit more recent, from 2018 and 19. In 2018, this was an exhibition at the London Design Festival, where in this picture, the rocking chaise is mine, my design from my Made in Ratio collection, but the dowels that are hanging from the ceiling are 10mm pine dowels, and they were part of the scenography, the exhibition design of this space. And once this exhibition that was up for 6 weeks was over, these pine dowels were well, they weren't going to go to waste. They were kindly given by the exhibition group to our studio to transform them creatively into something for the next London Design Festival. So to really think of the material in a different way, and in this case, stacking it up in a cross thatch method, we created this piece, which is from 422 different pieces of dowel that is all notched and glued together according to the golden ratio to create this golden ratio rectangular cell that really kind of gives this piece its strength. And though it is quite lightweight in structure and also components, it is extremely sturdy. And the whole thing is a 2.2 meter bench seat. Another area of recycling that I'm passionate about is with aluminium. One of the most, if not the most, let's say recyclable and also abundant materials that can be recycled. It really is a super alloy, and what you can do with it is amazing. So it's important that we understand the value of this metal and make sure that it is held within a circular economy, within a closed loop system, that it is being turned back into to objects, useful objects. And some of the things that we turn it in, we work with a small sand casting foundry in the south of England, in Southampton, where only scrap metal enters the foundry and only finished parts leave. The sand casting process is where the sand itself is broken down and dried over the top of the furnaces. So it literally is a closed loop system, as only scrap material comes in and finished product comes out, but also the sand is completely reused as well. So it's a beautiful little closed loop system where we are able to create really quite organic and quite beautiful shapes. You can start to see them emerging here as it's being demolded. And the design is a 6-legged table tripod or trestle that can kind of go any which way. It's configured both high and low. You can see here in the desk formation, it has this kind of yin-yang joint to it, so that it is the same part cast twice, another level of economy and also feasibility of material at that industrial scale. So getting back to Tasmania, I'm based in London, but I travel back to Australia frequently, or until obviously limitations of the past year have put a stop to that. But I get back there when I can, and obviously refresh my kind of my culture and my background, and also visit my family. But when I was back there in 2015, I was invited by the National Gallery of Victoria to visit, also to go to a remote part of Tasmania, where there was very little power, very little roads, and it's quite sparse. An area I knew and frequented on holidays with my family as a child. And I had memories of it as being pristine, a kind of paradise from my kind of boyhood years. But when I went back to the beach, you started to see things like this. And this photo is literally taken from the Tasmanian beach that really was that kind of turning point for me. This is not staged. This is as it is, literally taking a photo of at my feet. And you can see drink bottles and toothbrushes and fishing nets and caps and spray cans and so on. Now, this is nothing in comparison to what you're about to see, but the compelling moment for me was obviously that memory that I had, and that very kind of raw realness that this was happening. And if it happens in Tasmania, which is a sparsely populated area, and also quite remote from any large population really, then it is quite shocking. So it really kind of set me off on a discovery to kind of start to see this material, these objects, these polymers, these plastics, as the building blocks to something new, and then eventually, literally turn them into the pixels to kind of paint a pretty large, despairing, but quite beautiful at the same time picture. So my first port of call in this research was to tap into my local university, the University of Tasmania, where I'm a graduate, which has got two kind of areas of strength, and one of them is furniture design, fortunately, because of the prominence of craft and boat building, etc. in Tasmania. But also marine biology and ocean conservation, due to its proximity to the Antarctic and the Southern Ocean, New Zealand, Australia, Pacific, etc. So it really is a world leader in both those areas. So it was quite easy to really merge design and the sciences. And I worked closely and have ever since with Dr. Jennifer Lavers from the Institute of Marine and Antarctic Studies in Tasmania. And this is a photo that she took on quite some time ago, unfortunately. So I hate to break it to you, but the situation would be far worse now. But this is probably going on almost 10 years old, this image. It has been part of my presentations for 5 or 6 years. And it's also found its way onto many major news websites around the world, including the BBC and The Guardian. So it's a photo from Henderson Island in the South Pacific, which is uninhabited. So this is certainly not waste put there by anybody that uses the island. This is washed onto the west coast of this island. And as you can see, it's predominantly from the marine industry. So it really is marine debris. But we'll get into more of the problems and kind of reasons behind it as we kind of go on. So this is a video. Sorry, I'm not sure if this is going to play. Let's try this. It is a bit of a jumpy image anyway, because it is GoPro footage, but this is from Hawaii, and you can start to see the microplastics that are really breaking down and well, making up the high tide line that comes in literally twice a day with the tides. So unfortunately, a lot of the Pacific Islands are faced with this. And this is also our biggest source of the ocean plastic that we collect. So what forms are these gyres, where the plastic whirlpools into these areas, and it kind of conjugates into the middle. And many of you may be aware of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. That's obviously the largest one. It sits between Hawaii and California, and it literally is almost like the kitchen sink of the world. It's basically where all the ocean plastic will eventually will end up, unfortunately. And it is a little bit of a dead zone where there's not a lot of activity. But unfortunately, there is a huge abundance of this plastic soup. So hopefully this plays to give you a bit of an idea of it. But this is just a mini gyre that's formed into a small cove. Yet again, a lot of marine debris. And thanks to an international network of beachcombers, people who I've met over the years through my travels, and also through collaborations, etc., collect these microplastics. And we then, in the studio in London, do what we can to clean, sort, remove any natural materials, and let's say kind of sieve into different grades that we can use in the various different artworks and design works that we create. So this research was all kind of happening in 2015 at the same time that the opportunity to represent Australia at the London Design Biennale came up. This was the very first Design Biennale ever held in 2016 at Somerset House. And I thought that it was very important that Australia, as the world's largest island and the kind of custodian of the ocean, let's say, took a leading role in the stewardship of the seas and also tackling the issue of ocean plastic. It was also important to literally bring the issue of ocean plastic to the round table of this international design forum. So that was the design task at hand. So the design, which is a mosaic made up of 36 lines across and 36 lines around, so referencing the lines of latitude and longitude of the world, and it breaks it into cells that then we gradated the plastic, almost as you just saw, a kind of paint by numbers kind of system. It was an observation, and you may have seen in some of the photos before, that there is an abundance of white, blues and blacks in ocean plastic. And that's probably because the blacks are predominantly things like gardening and irrigation equipment, some fisheries. Blues are from cosmetics, kitchen, kind of bathroom products, containers. You think of disinfectants and so on, tend to be a lot of blues. Whites also bathroom products, etc. And there is an abundance of these. There are other reasons why the colours, the warmer colours are taken, and that is a scientific theory that those warmer UV colours are more attracted by sea life, by birds, and also fish, and the theories that they're being consumed, sadly. But this is what has been either collected from the beaches or skimmed off the surface of the ocean, and very painstakingly sorted, colour sorted, graded, etc., in the studio, and this is literally the building blocks of what becomes gyro table, which references the ocean gyre with its 36 revolutions around and its 36 lines across, and it really is this kind of Milky Way of ocean plastic fragments. Estimated on weight, there's over 500,000 fragments of ocean plastic in this table. It is held together with a bioresin in the individual tiles. We did a lot of research into how to reconstitute in a way, or reform a lot of these plastics, but the problem is that they would not only vary different polymers. Of course, we're able to only certain polymers float, some sink, unfortunately. So there is estimated to be about 14 or 15 trillion, million tons of plastic at the on the seabed, unfortunately. So, but we're looking at the materials predominantly polyethylenes, polypropylenes, etc. would float, and also can range anywhere from a day old to 60 years old. So they do have a very different kind of molecular structures, but also stages of deterioration through to UV exposure, salt water, and the movement in the oceans. So it's a very complex issue. It's a very complex issue environmentally. It's a very complex issue technically, from an engineering and a kind of chemical stance. We've done a lot of testing and a lot of working with various scientists and engineers, material specialists, and a lot of product testing has kind of gone into this. Anton, do you mind playing the second video? So this is from the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne. This is an exhibition in 2017. This was following after the London Design Biennale, where the table was set amongst some famous paintings by the likes of Turner, where they had these hues of blue, which were very much reflected in the table. And this was presented in an exhibition that was in Melbourne and visited by over 1 million people. So there's a very high level of kind of, well, not just media, but also education. A lot of school groups and children would come in and be, I guess, both fascinated and also kind of quite taken back by not only the scale of it, but also the microplastic elements. So other ways that we look at it, which is not so painstakingly to sort. Sorry, Anton, can we move back to the slideshow? This is the material, let's say, in its more of its raw form. Obviously, it's been cleaned and processed and so on. And when I say clean, it's only really washed and sterilised, and there's no harsh chemical treatments. We're not interested in making matters any worse. So you'll also see a lot of kind of very perfect kind of pieces, perfectly rounded pieces in there, which are known as nurdles or pre-production plastic pellets. Is even another low point of ocean plastic in which it's not like the object has been used, discarded, found its way into a waterway and out into the middle of the ocean to break down by the sun and the sea and the salt, to then return as a fragment or many fragments. Sometimes the plastic is lost before it's even turned into an object, on its way to the factory to become something, either washed down a storm drain, factory floor, poor material management. You've got to understand this stuff is not worth much money at all. So so the fact that some of it gets lost is not a problem to some. And then you also see that, yeah, a lot of it can get lost in transit, lost in sea, etc. So there are unfortunately trillions of them out there Sometimes they're known as mermaid tears. So we find a lot of them. We work with one group in the south of England that has found literally millions and millions and millions of them. So this is the flotsam bench seat. So this is looking at a way of that we can almost do a kind of let's say kind of slip cast single ocean terrazzo kind of style, rather than an open mold where all the material floats. It literally floats within the bioresin like it does on the ocean. And then it's very similar to like a cut concrete floor, like it's photographed on here. It literally is just cut through, polished, and then all of a sudden the magic kind of colors take shape. And you can literally start to see some of the fragments in there and how they are. For example, if you see that very large yellow one that's quite prominent, you'll see that it's got a white almost halo around it. And that is because that is the start of its degradation due to the sun, UV exposure. It's basically starting to fade. And as we cut back through it, we start to see the pigment of the original polymer in the core. So a lot of the fragments within these pieces certainly have different coloured fringes than what they would do in the core because of those environmental effects. And it will also kind of show how long some of the pieces have been there. Sometimes we have done tests to check some of the DNA. Obviously, you'll be able to tell what polymer it is by giving it a kind of high frequency scan. But it's a very expensive process when you're talking about and millions of pieces. Ongoing projects that we're doing, working with a conservation group in the Arctic Circle out of Norway, where we collect fishing offcuts. Basically, as you've seen earlier, unfortunately, the fishing industry is not very responsible with the material that they have. And what we find is lots of rope repairs and also little tie-offs of all different kind of colours and so on. So we're looking at a project at the moment where we can 3D print these components. There is a lot of it. There's also ghost nets, which are nets that are left to see, which will go. You can see the rope in the background actually has a diameter that's quite large. It's from a fishing industries, and the test that's in the hand is literally taking that same material and 3D printing it. There's a short video here that shows that process. There's some tests. And these are the types of structures that we're looking to do. This is a sculpture in Tasmania, where I'm from. It is a not 8 metre tall. It's a bench seat, basically. So the bit at the bottom is a bench seat. It's a meeting point. So the building to the left is a ferry terminal, and you would meet at this kind of, let's say, almost teardrop kind of shape underneath the arch before travelling on to the ferry. In 2017, we did let's say, a kind of design environment activism project for the London Design Festival. This is at the Me Hotel in London, which is at the end of the Strand. It's a Norman Foster designed atrium. It's 110 foot high, and it's literally 3 planes prism of Carrara marble, and then projected with onto the walls. Anton, could you please play the 3rd video? So you will see every minute a drop of water falls from the very center of this atrium. This is looking down into a pool of water, and the pool of water is made from the ocean terrazzo. So it too has 500,000 fragments of ocean plastic making out its surface. Then the ripple effect, or the butterfly effect, of this drop of water was then reflected as a roaring wave, and we took aerial footage from the Pacific of waves that were then projected using video mapping cameras that are overlapping onto the two walls of this video space. Now, for every minute for, I think it was about 3 weeks, 24/7, because it's a hotel, the water would drop and the wave would continue. And there's a shot looking up to the top of the atrium. The water would drop from that triangle there. This is a more recent project, and the piece that is currently at the exhibition in Moscow. It's the capsule ocean plastic hourglass, and this was designed very much in the need to have an object of great meaning, to really question our relationship with plastic and our responsibility with the natural world. It literally is a message in a bottle. It is a timepiece to symbolize that time is running out. From some of the footage that I've shown you, you can see that if we're not careful, then obviously plastic will outweigh the sand at the beaches. And obviously what I felt when I was moved so much returning to the beaches of my boyhood, unfortunately that pristine paradise is no longer, and now if we're not careful we will lose many more. So it's very much a powerful message within this piece, and I'm very fortunate and very happy to be sharing it with you in Moscow. And on the caps, it has these laser etched stainless steel caps on either end that have the coordinates of where the plastic has been collected, and we produce these as an addition where we can actually use the plastic that's inside has come from the reference on the cap on the top. So that's it. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Спасибо огромное за такую интересную.
Thank you so much for this very interesting presentation. And I have already got some questions through the chat from our viewers. And there are questions that many people ask, whether it's safe to use this ocean plastic. Because when we're talking about recycling plastics, many people think that it's toxic. You have to run many tests. You have to get certificates for this. And maybe these objects will not be certified for sale. What kinds of certificates do you obtain? What kind of tests do you run?
Well, as I mentioned, we can do some tests on some of the pieces that we collect. We are not turning, we're obviously turning these pieces into, let's say, high-end design works, artworks. We're not turning them back into anything that is sanitary or food, children's toys or anything like that. So, and we use them obviously within the case of the hourglass, it's encapsulated, within the glass. But yeah, it is difficult to know whether it is. Obviously, we do a lot of washing and the kind of sanitizing process as much as possible.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you. Another question about microplastics in the hourglass. Does it work as precisely as sand, second by second, or is it just an installation, an art object that can be used to keep time?
No, unfortunately, it's not an accurate timepiece. It is a.
И мне интересно, как много таких штук.
I'm interested in how many hourglasses have you made from various beaches across the earth? How many capsules have you made?
We have made to date somewhere in the 20s, 20 or 30. We're in the process of making a special edition run with an American kind of outfit. I'm sure they won't mind me saying, with Parley for the Oceans, which is they'll be it's coming out. It's coming out soon.
У нас тоже есть из
We also have a project, several projects in the exhibition that use materials from various parts of the earth, lots of utility projects, and it's always interesting when we see in the same space project made for life and conceptual projects.
Yes.
Because this allows us to rethink all these questions and allows the viewers to see it from various perspectives. And now one more question. What kind of a volume of manufacturing from recycled plastics must there be so that it becomes a closed loop and sustainable and does good for the planet? And the second question from the same viewer, maybe we need some more mass market projects that can be easily replicated to make more out of this material.
Yes, of course, that is the only way. Like, honestly, the only way we're really going to solve the problem is to turn off the tap and stop putting it in the ocean in the first place. Of course, no one is putting it in there voluntarily or purposely. It just comes down to poor material management. And I think it's what I was talking about with the aluminium. Once we see the value in that material, that we want to make sure that is respected within a recycling closed loop system, then prized material will never get out. But unfortunately, because the plastic is virtually kind of worthless, is so cheap, then and in abundance as well, then unfortunately it's not seen that value. It doesn't have that monetary value to kind of for people to make those efforts. So unfortunately, yes, it really relies in these, let's say, kind of art projects and special projects that I'm doing to do that. But if what I do inspires others and opens doors and makes other people kind of change the ways that they do, then of course that's a powerful message. We are looking at ways that we can also do more at the beaches, like some of those images I showed you at the start, literally to pick up the materials. Like, you know, I've been there, I've seen it firsthand, and it's not just the plastic that's on the beaches. The communities there could also do with the industry, the income, the initiative to build things. So if we could find ways that we can do as much of that work as possible, literally at the point of collection, then that would be a big step forward in creating some kind of closed loop.
Вопрос от нашего коллеги.
Another question from a colleague that has helped us with this broadcast today. We saw a table and art objects made of plastic, of recycled plastic, both utilitarian and art objects. Maybe in the nearest future, we will see very large objects made of plastic. For example, whole furniture sets, kitchen sets, or maybe furniture for a whole house. What do you think? Is it a matter of a close future, or is it a bit far-fetched and just dreams?
No. I think people are already doing it, because what you can see, I know in the Netherlands, councils are taking large amounts of plastic. This is probably more domestic plastic from recycling, milk bottles, drink bottles, food packaging, etc. And it is all being remelted. At that stage it's quite easy, because you can turn the packet over, you can see its recycling number, you can categorize it, process it, you understand what it is. Obviously with ocean plastic you don't have that. But in the case of the domestic plastics, yes, you know, this material is being turned into some pretty crude kind of building components. But that's not a problem. It's quite an interesting aesthetic. So therefore they can be anything from, I think they're looking at things like railway sleepers for trains, literally the pieces, to bollards. So a lot of things for the civic and engineering, which is at scale.
Возможно ли такой пластик?
Next, is it possible to use ocean microplastics to create clothing and footwear?
Yeah, microplastics probably not, because what you'd have to do is you would have to try and separate them to the different colours, and then process them individually depending on what they are. I think when companies and I know companies that make clothing and shoes and footwear, I think when they say ocean plastic, they're predominantly using PET bottles, so drink bottles, from the oceans, because it's a very high performance material. You can also, it's more easily recyclable. It's obviously easily identifiable, so you know what it is, and it can be processed that way. But the microplastics is because of its scale, it's so dangerous, because it can be consumed by the fish and sea life, and eventually, us, because it enters our food chain. But it also, because of its scale, it can just reach into very hard to get to coastlines and areas. So it makes it very difficult to kind of clean and to pick up. So that's why I've chosen to focus my work on the microplastic, because it is the biggest problem.
Another question from a viewer. How do you determine different forms of plastics? How do you classify them?
Different forms of plastic, how do you categorize them? In the forms of microplastics, you can use different forms of flotation in different solvents and liquids. Not that we really do that. As I mentioned, we only really kind of use water and a very low grade sterilizing solution, just to kind of help kind of clean the materials. But if you wanted to take that further, you can use different forms of flotation. Obviously, if it's a large piece, you can turn it over and see the recycling number that's under it. You get it that way. Other ways is you can use an infrared scanner, as I mentioned, which would obviously give you a feedback of what it is, and apparently they're quite accurate. And I've only ever seen one in a laboratory that I was collaborating with on one occasion, and it wasn't really what we needed.
Я вижу, это прям волнительная тема.
I see that this is a very important subject, because they repeat questions. So what to do if the plastic is toxic, as you've mentioned? How can it be used in everyday life? This issue of toxicity of the material seems to be quite pressing for our viewers. They have no trust to recycle plastic, because this plastic has served in various roles, and maybe it comes from non-toxic uses. What can you say?
Это может быть даже не вопрос.
Maybe it's not just a question to you, but rather a comment, because this issue of toxicity keeps coming up in our lectures, both today and the visitors at the exhibition also ask us quite a lot of these questions. Although our exhibition has a section that shows works by Dutch and Belgian studios that are children's toys and children's furniture. That means this plastic is not toxic, can be used in contact with people, as it can be used for children.
Вопрос, который интересует меня.
But then a true question.
Yes.
У меня вопрос про
A
субсидии.
question on subsidizing designers for designers working with plastics in the UK. Are there any subsidies for such projects? Any tax returns? Any support from the government?
Yeah, sometimes obviously with in regards to the subsidies, there is some support with research and development. It's probably something that we don't really take too far because of my work is obviously on that fringe between kind of industrial design and art. But there are things. If we were more set up for it in industry, then it would obviously be more important for us. That's not just from a material side of things and an industry side of things, but I think obviously from an environmental side of things as well. So, yeah, if a company sets themselves up in the right way, then there should be some benefits there, as well as public and consumer support as well. If they all do it in the right way. In regards to the pieces in your exhibition, which I think I know the pieces that you're talking about. Yes, you know, with children's furniture, you've got to be very careful in what you do. If I remember that, I think they're rotationally molded polyethylene, so therefore that is quite a pristine material. I think that they're probably also quite protected by the virgin material that they include, or knowing a very consistent supply of recycled material. I think when it comes to recycling, it doesn't really matter what material it is, whether it's glass or metal or plastic. It really comes down to how clean the source is and how consistent it is. And I think once they kind of have that, then it starts to kind of make financial reason.
Ваш ответ, он просто предвосхитил
I think your answer went to answer the next question as well, because they asked whether you collect everything yourselves or do you get any help from governmental agencies or private enterprises? Where do you collect your materials?
I have collected it myself. I've been to all of the sites that we collected from, except for the gyro table, which because that was important to be an atlas of ocean plastic, literally kind of like a snapshot of ocean plastic around the world, via, I think it was 5 years ago. So I think it was predominantly via Facebook. We kind of put out a call to all like-minded people around the world, beachcombers, coastal care groups, beach cleaners, all types of things, to collect and to send us these pieces, which we then processed all as one. So in that case, no, I haven't been to those locations, but the predominant ones in Hawaii, in the south of England, in Cornwall and Devon, in Australia, in Tasmania, and some of the locations also in Asia. But no, you know, there is a wide network of people that we work with and also support financially. Obviously, when we sell work, then we're able to purchase the materials from them. It's very important for us. If we were to make a table out of wood, we'd have to go to buy the wood. So in the case of the ocean plastic, we buy the ocean plastic and obviously support the people who are collecting it and you know, collecting it with great effort.
И наши слушатели, я думаю, дизайнеры интересуются.
I think it's a question from designers among our viewers, a very practical question. Your work requires some funding to hire people to pay for research, to produce the actual objects. Who finances your projects? How do you finance it?
In regards to the research, I've got to be honest. In regards to the scientists and so on, it's been quite collaborative. Shared in the greater good, and I think that if it's also been approached under the umbrella of various universities, not just the University of Tasmania, which I mentioned with their Institute of Marine and Antarctic Studies, but it's gone further to like the Natural History Museum here in London, Plymouth University in the south of England that we work with, but also individual groups as well. And a lot of those groups are also are organised and run by very passionate volunteers who then, when work is, let's say, is sold and they're contributed to it, as I mentioned, we help them with either donations to their charities or their NGOs, or we've purchased equipment for them to continue the work that they're doing and support them in their educational programs. But yeah, unfortunately, we've had to do that. Of course, when it comes to the fabrication of the works, yes, but we've been building furniture pieces for the 20 years, so we're just using all the fabrication techniques we know.
Потрясающе видеть.
Thank you. It was really inspiring to see furniture that looks so luxuriously, I'm not afraid of this word, and very sophisticated, with very immaculate finish, just like an object of collecting, an object of art, while understanding that they're made of recycled materials. And today, we have, among the viewers, we have your new fans, the Museum of Garbage, that's how it's called, and their representatives write here in the chat that they are dreaming of having a series of your lectures at their events, and we'll give you their contacts so that you can get in touch directly.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Я благодарю.
I'd like to thank you. I'd like to extend my heartfelt thanks to you. It was a very inspiring discussion, and we are really thankful that you were able to find time to share your experience with Russian designers, people who are really interested in this subject of recycling. And I see in the chat messages with thanks and applause, with lots of exclamation marks. They're writing, thank you, bravo.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Well, no, thank you for this opportunity, and not just the opportunity to talk, but also to show the work in Moscow. Hopefully, it reopens soon and continues the message that is very important. So I'm very honoured to have my work in new audience and opportunities, and having an opportunity to talk about it. It is not just, let's say, the beautiful finished product that people may see on websites and so on. It is all of that research and all of those stories that are behind it, the people, the kind of the trial and the error and all the hard graft that goes into it. And it's opportunities like that that let us tell those stories. So thank you.
Спасибо вам большое.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to invite all our viewers to join us again on December the 15th at 10 o'clock Moscow time. We'll have a panel discussion with our light company talking about the art of lighting, including art of lighting exhibition spaces. It must be interesting for our colleagues. I'd like to thank Brody Neil for this, and we will stay in touch. And I do hope that when all borders are open, you will be able to visit Moscow and our exhibition, because it has been prolonged until June.
Wow. Yes, of course, I'd love to. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Все, я выключу.